Just as a perfect diamond is rare, rarer still is the perfect crime. But one October morning, it happens. It's well organized, the thieves in full disguise.
Please don't hurt anybody, please.
Split-second timing, exquisite taste, and in less than 2 minutes, they have their prize. $1.2 million in jewelry, one of the biggest heists in Canadian history. And then, they vanish into thin air. In true crime, investigation and conviction may take years. But every detective knows that the crucial clue is always there, somewhere in the first 72 hours. Vancouver, 1986. Police are on the scene of a jewel heist in minutes. But the terrified staff can't tell them much about the robbers. They were in full disguise. They knew exactly which counters to hit, only those with valuable jewelry. The robbery happened in broad daylight.
Do not call the police.
And yet nobody saw the thieves run out of the mall. Police don't have much to go on. But in a back corridor, police find their first clues: the robbers' disguises and a shotgun. It takes time to trace the gun. It isn't registered to a Vancouver owner. Instead, the gun is tracked to a recent theft half a continent away, in Ottawa. The gun is sent to Ottawa detectives Ralph Heyerhoff and George Snyder.
The shotgun was a sawed-off shotgun. The serial number was not filed off. It was still intact. And ironically enough, at that time, I was investigating a break-in in Weston of Ottawa where the shotgun had been stolen from. It matched up with the serial numbers.
Heyerhoff is convinced that whoever stole the gun here must be connected to the heist in Vancouver. But is the story that simple?
I knew I had to find the guy who did the break-and-enter.
The detectives have years of first-hand experience with the Ottawa criminal underworld. Luckily, Detective George Snyder is a walking encyclopedia of local criminals.
Well, my specialty when I came to this case was street informants. There was nobody that I arrested that I did not try to turn. And by turn, I tried to get information out of them.
One of those informants told them who had stolen the gun. It takes detectives a while to chase down the thief, one of the busiest break-and-enter artists in town, Lefty Williams. He's used to negotiating with police. He's got a long rap sheet, but he knows they won't arrest him for just stealing the gun if he gives them the information they're looking for. He says he doesn't know anything about a heist in Vancouver. All he knows is that he sold the gun to a major player in town, someone known as the Big Man. It was weeks ago when Lefty took the gun to a strip club. But he tells police that the Big Man never dirties his hands with any illicit transactions. He has others to do that work. He's got a good right-hand man who looks after all the details. Lefty says he was paid in drugs and some cash. But after that, he has no idea what happened to the gun. Police know the Big Man very well. He's a kingpin in the Ottawa criminal underworld, a guy who receives and sells stolen property, a fence. They've been trying to get evidence on him for years.
He's connected to the criminal underworld in Ottawa probably better than almost everybody. If you were looking for a gun to do a job, you could go to him and get a gun. If you were looking for an accomplice, you could go to him and he would connect you with somebody that would be your accomplice on the job, and he would also take care of the product after you brought it back.
If the big man fenced the shotgun used in the Vancouver jewelry heist, there's a good chance he moved the stolen goods as well.
He was moving as much stolen property as Sears was moving legitimate property, but there was little or nothing we could do about it.
Police would have to catch the big man with the hot property in order to arrest him. But they know this guy's a smooth operator. He and the jewelry store bandit would have worked out a tight turnaround, and the jewels would be long gone by now.
He's a professional. Being a criminal was his business. He understood that being a police officer was your business. He respected you. He expected you to show respect to him, and game on.
Police review the case files of 8 major jewelry store robberies over the past 3 years, right across the country. They discover all have the same modus operandi as in the Vancouver heist: disguises, guns, split-second timing, and invisible getaways. The Burke's jewelry chain is their favorite target.
And again, everything starts falling into place. The light bulbs start going on and start realizing it's all connected.
They surmise there must be one mastermind behind all this, someone bigger than the big man. Sometimes with an accomplice, sometimes working alone. And then, one morning, Heyerhoff and Snyder receive some shocking news. A jewelry store robbery is underway right in their own backyard. The detectives race to the store to catch the jewel thieves in a downtown mall. But if this heist is the work of the same mastermind, they'll be too quick for police. The mastermind and his accomplice have pulled off a perfect robbery. No gun left behind this time.
Ironically enough, we had a police Crime Stopper event going on at that time. It was pretty bold and brazen to go up 3 floors and rob the largest jewelry store in the mall, and then these guys took off.
Take care. All right, thank you. Okay. All right, have a nice day.
By the time police arrive, the bandits have walked away with $180,000 in estate jewelry. Whoever the mastermind is, he's a pro's pro, and he's probably already planning his next heist. Detectives George Snyder and Ralph Heyerhoff are still one step behind the mastermind of several jewelry store robberies. He's just disappeared with 180 grand in jewelry. Odds are, he'll unload the goods through the most notorious fence in town, the big man.
He was well known for jewelry. He likes jewelry, he would wear a lot of jewelry, and was very, very knowledgeable about jewelry.
It was a bit of a fetish with him. It was his trademark. So we started to just focus all of our attention on who was around the club.
If the bandit is working with the big man, he will eventually have to make contact with him. But no one suspicious appears outside the club. Only Jimmy Risley, the longtime bouncer. He's the big man's right-hand man.
We began an intensive surveillance of him and his activities.
If the jewelry is moving through the club, Jimmy's the guy who will do the transactions. Following him might lead police to the bandit. But he's very surveillance conscious and good at smelling out cops.
He was very adept at tricking us and getting so that he was basically chasing the surveillance team instead of us chasing him.
The fact that he was willing to chase us, I thought that was interesting. It was scary at first, and then I thought, wow, this is pretty neat. He's pretty bold. He's not afraid of us. I knew this was pointless. The surveillance stuff wasn't going to work, so we had to go to the direct approach. He knows we're there. Let's just go meet the guy and talk to him.
I invited him to join me for breakfast right across the street so I could have a conversation with him. He failed to show up, which did not surprise me.
Suspecting that Jimmy's still in his apartment, the detectives use the super's key to surprise him. Jimmy might be smart, but he's also extremely claustrophobic. Detectives question him about the jewelry store heists, but he's not in a cooperative mood.
He's a very hyper guy, very active guy, very animated. His hands were going, his head would be going, his feet would be going all the time. Like he couldn't sit still at all.
Jimmy's not giving them what they need. They remind him there's a warrant out for him on a recent break and enter. They threaten to arrest him on the spot.
This guy definitely did not want to go back to jail. I mean, he really didn't have much of a choice. He was going to have to cooperate or do substantial amount of jail time.
I asked him, what do you know about the Burke's Bandit? He wouldn't give me a straight answer, but he said, well, there's a new guy around. I don't really know his name. I don't know much about him. I think he's an American.
A few days later, Heyerhoff spots someone matching the description of the new guy. Heyerhoff runs the license plate. The guy's name is Robert Whiteman, and he lives in Pembroke, a town an hour outside of Ottawa.
We were very experienced, seasoned police officers, and we knew the majority of the main players in town. We did not know this guy.
So for now, the police are going to just watch him. Inside the club, Detective Snyder sees Whiteman flashing cash. But that's not illegal. In fact, he just seems like some guy who likes strip clubs. Although he's suspiciously friendly with the big man. Detectives travel to Pembroke, where Robert Whiteman has lived with his girlfriend for the past couple of years.
He was a middle-aged gentleman with a young family, not the sort of person that you would be thinking was a criminal at all, just very, very average. He worked for his father's security company, moving money around and also doing background checks of businesses for their security.
Whiteman appears to be clean. He has no criminal record. It may just be another dead end for police. But then, from a routine analysis of Robert Whiteman's bank and credit card records, document specialist Mel Robertson discovers something astounding.
We started looking at his banking statements, and as a result of that, we came across the gold mine. We found that we could put him through the use of his banking cards where the robberies had happened.
Robertson sees that every time a major jewelry store was robbed, Whiteman was in that city using his credit card.
Well, I think the most exciting moment was when we recognized that he had purchased a meal using that credit card the day of the Burke's job in Vancouver, dining right across the street.
Police now believe that, contrary to all appearances, Robert Whiteman could be the master jewel thief they've been looking for. But in order to prove it, they need to nab Whiteman with the goods. And that's not easy, because jewelry is fenced within hours. Once again, police turn to Jimmy the bouncer for information.
One of the goals that I had was to try to get him to forecast a job so that he would tell us in advance when a job was going down. Our investigation had shown that Mr. Whiteman was flying all over Canada, and that wherever he flew, jobs went down.
Jimmy doesn't know about any future jobs. But he does say that just yesterday, he and the big man were talking. When Whiteman drove up and started bragging about pulling a heist in Winnipeg the day before. Winnipeg police confirmed Jimmy's story. An armed robbery was carried out yesterday by a man in disguise. Early the next morning, the detectives returned to Pembroke.
We were left with no alternative, so the only approach at that time was then the direct approach. Speak to him, see what he has to say, maybe get something out of that.
Whiteman's girlfriend says he's not home. He had to leave suddenly on business. She adds that maybe they can still catch him at the Pembroke airport. The detectives can't believe it. They have surveillance in place at the Ottawa airport, but
None of us were from Pembroke, and none of us realized that there was an airport in Pembroke.
once again, they are one step behind.
Our first concern was that he has spotted our surveillance. He's figured out the heat is on and he's flown the coop.
Or he might be on his way to another robbery, and they'll be too late to stop him. By the time detectives Snyder and Heyerhoff arrive at the local Pembroke airport, suspected master jewel thief Robert Whiteman has literally flown the coop.
Fortunately for us, we decided that maybe let's investigate him leaving. Let's assume that maybe he's gone for another job.
Detective Heyerhoff discovers that Whiteman has chartered a small plane to a city 1 hour away. And sure enough, police learn another heist has just gone down with a man in disguise. If Whiteman sticks to his MO, he'll be back in Pembroke before the day is out.
We've got a very, very good plan in place. He's going to come back to his family, and he's going to carry all of the goodies with him when he comes back.
Hours later, detectives spot Whiteman's girlfriend waiting for him at the airport.
On the day of the takedown, she was devastated. She just couldn't believe it. She was just in total denial. She said, "No, you've got the wrong person. He's a businessman, he travels a lot, but he's not a robber."
The proof is irrefutable. Whiteman has been caught red-handed. But detectives are surprised by his cool, unflappable demeanor, as if he's going to get away with everything.
My gut feeling, in looking at him, there was something still missing in our investigation that he knew was missing.
That's when police discover something very odd about Whiteman's past.
There was no evidence of him existing prior to 1985. No birth certificates, no previous driver's licenses, no previous addresses. So it's like he'd been parachuted into Pembroke.
His prints are sent to Interpol, and police suspicions are confirmed. The name Robert Whiteman is an alias.
He was then identified as Gilbert Galvin, an escapee from the United States.
I went back and asked Mr. Galvin under that name how he was doing, and the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. When he heard the name Galvin, he knew that he was done.
Under his alias, Robert Whiteman, he could easily have been released on bail and then skipped the country.
Now that we knew he was Mr. Galvin, he was an American, he'd already fled a institution down in the States, he was not going to be getting bail. So any thought that he had that he was going to be getting out was now gone.
3 years before, Gilbert Galvin had escaped a Michigan prison where he was serving time for fraud. He headed for Ottawa and adopted the alias Robert Whiteman. As Whiteman, he started a new criminal career, robbing banks across the country. He always worked alone. Dressed as a businessman, Whiteman would charter a small plane from Pembroke and transfer to Air Canada at a larger airport. Guns packed in his luggage went from one hold to the other without ever being checked by security. Whiteman tells police he's soon tired of robbing banks. His average haul was less than $5 grand.
Morning.
Well, hello.
Jewelry stores could give him much more.
This is an exquisite piece.
And even better, he admits, diamonds took his breath away.
Thank you very much.
But in order to rob jewelry stores, he needed to work with an accomplice. It was worth it. With a partner, Whiteman could scoop hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of diamonds in less than 2 minutes.
His skills as a bandit were way above anything I had ever seen before. The fact that he would do these jobs right at noon, no getaway car, no running, just very, very calmly leave the job. I'm sure his heart was pounding, but he kept it all together, under control, would oftentimes see the police running.
But Whiteman made one fatal mistake. He used an inexperienced accomplice at the Vancouver jewelry heist. And that accomplice left behind the only clue for police to follow, the shotgun, found in the first hours of the investigation.
In my mind, if he'd continued to operate alone, he might have continued for a long, long time before anybody caught wind of what he was up to.
In the end, Gilbert Galvin, AKA Robert Whiteman, is charged with 59 counts of armed robbery. Police try to bargain with him, give up the big man who undoubtedly moved the jewelry, and Galvin will do less time. But Galvin won't rat on the fence. It's not his style. For that bit of bravado, Gilbert Galvin is sentenced to 20 years in Canadian prison.
I certainly respected Mr. Galvin. He was obviously very, very bright. And it was quite a challenge to go after him. He didn't think very much of Canadian police, but now that we had him, he realized that we were a lot smarter than he had initially given us credit for. And you could see the respect was there, going both ways.
The more than $2 million worth of cash and jewelry he stole has never been recovered. The stories on 72 Hours are true. The detectives and forensic scientists are the ones who actually worked on the case. The names of the victims are fictitious. The names of the convicted are real.